Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90.
We're at risk across the world. Then they point to the end of World War II.
President Joe Biden continuing his France visit today, delivering a speech at Pointe du Hoc about the importance of defending freedom and democracy. Biden plans to use the site to rally Americans and continue his message that democracy is under threat by Donald Trump in this year's presidential election.
I just went through a rigged trial in New York.
Former President Donald Trump speaking at a town hall in Phoenix, Arizona yesterday, where he returned to the campaign trail for the first time as a convicted felon. Meanwhile, Trump saying he plans to reveal who his running mate will be at the Republican National Convention next month. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address lawmakers in a joint session on July 24th. Congressional leaders deciding on the date late last night. However, not all lawmakers will welcome him with open arms. The May jobs report is another solid month of employment gains. Some are saying the unemployment rate could reach 4% for the first time in more than 2 years. With high interest rates and inflation, more middle-class Americans are forced to penny pinch. Those are your headlines. Now here's a look at your weather on the ones.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez. On this Friday, we have temperatures that are going to be in the 70s from Chicago to Columbus to New York City. Buffalo rain and 68 degrees, a hot day in Dallas at 95. And we still have the heat with the excessive heat warnings for places like Phoenix and Vegas. It's going to stay drier on the West Coast. Showers and storms will break out, some severe in Nebraska. More on that coming up.
Thanks so much for joining us. President Joe Biden returning to the Normandy coast today, marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Biden planning to use the historic Pointe du Hoc site to rally Americans in defense of democracy. Yesterday, Biden honoring World War II veterans and laying a wreath at the Normandy American Cemetery. National correspondent Harry Lee has more.
President Biden will deliver another speech today, this time from Pointe du Hoc, a storied area of cliffs along the coast U.S. Army Rangers scaled as part of the D-Day invasion. The 2nd Ranger Battalion was assigned what was deemed an impossible mission to capture German artillery at the top of those cliffs. After 2 days, 77 were dead and 152 wounded, but Pointe du Hoc was under Allied control.
In their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty.
Biden is expected to draw direct parallels between the threats facing Europe and existential fight between a dictatorship and freedom and the threats in 2024.
We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom?
Yesterday, Biden specifically mentioned the threat posed to Ukrainian democracy by Russia's invasion. He's set to meet with Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Zelensky with a package of $225 million in weapons. It will be their first face-to-face talk since Zelensky visited Washington in December to request more military aid.
We have to make sure that Putin doesn't have the ability to trample Ukraine, because as the president said, there's a good chance, almost certain, that
presidential trips overseas often focus on U.S. relations with other countries. But President Biden's focus on this trip is also on U.S. voters ahead of the November election. He's trying to connect threats to democracy in Europe with threats to democracy at home that he says are posed by his opponent, former President Donald Trump. In Washington, Harry Lee, Spectrum News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to address a joint session of Congress on July 24th. Some Democrats are voicing opposition to the speech, saying it could be politically divisive. Meantime, a new analysis showing a sharp decline in the proportion of women and children being killed in the war. Spectrum's Fallon Silcox has more.
This little boy is picking through the rubble of the latest airstrike that Gaza officials say killed at least 33, some saying more than 40 people early Thursday morning. It happened at a school run by the UN that serves as a shelter homes. The Israeli military saying it targeted militants sheltering there.
We've seen the claims that 14 children were killed in this strike, and certainly when you see, if that is accurate, that 14 children were killed, those aren't terrorists. And so the government of Israel has said that they are going to release more information about this strike, including the names of those who died in it. We expect them to be fully transparent in making that information public.
Aside from the airstrikes, children in Gaza are also experiencing extreme food poverty. A new UNICEF report shows 9 out of 10 children don't have access to enough food groups to sustain optimal growth and development. This all comes after the U.S. and 16 other nations urged Hamas and Israel to close an agreement on a ceasefire. And the Associated Press looking at data from the Hamas rent of those killed in the Gaza Strip during April, that's down from more than 60% in October. Congress will learn more next month on Israel's plans. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted an invitation to Washington on July 24th to share the Israeli government's vision on democracy, terrorism, and establishing peace in the region, with Netanyahu saying he intends to address the war in Gaza. I'm Fallon Silcox, Spectrum News.
Donald Trump says he will reveal his running mate at the Republican National Convention next month. The presumptive GOP nominee made the announcement in an interview with TV psychologist Phil McGraw that aired yesterday. Sources say the VP contenders have received vetting materials. The list reportedly includes North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator J.D. Vance, Senator Tim Scott, Representative Elise Stefanik, and Ben Carson. The Republican National Convention is slated to take place July 15th to the 18th in Milwaukee. Federal prosecutors are wrapping up their dedicated to highlighting the seriousness of Hunter Biden's drug problem. National political reporter Taylor Popolars has the latest from Washington.
At the center of this trial is whether President Joe Biden's son Hunter knowingly lied about his illegal drug use when he bought and briefly owned a gun back in 2018. His sister-in-law and ex-girlfriend, Hallie Biden, took the stand Thursday and was pressed on whether she knew Hunter was using drugs during the month he bought the gun. Hallie ultimately testified that she did not actually witness him using drugs in October 2018 when he bought and owned the gun. She also spoke about throwing the weapon away that month, battled addiction. The president's son faces 3 felony charges that accuse him of lying to a federally licensed gun dealer, falsely claiming on the application he was not a drug user, and illegally owning the gun for 11 days. The jury heard Hallie recount how a romantic relationship started between her and Hunter after his brother Beau, her husband, died of brain cancer in 2015. Appearing as a prosecution witness, she testified that Hunter introduced her to crack in 2018, but she stopped using it shortly after. A big focus of the trial has been testimony from Hunter's romantic partners, including his ex-wife Kathleen Buell and ex-girlfriend Zoe Kestan, recounting when they saw him using drugs. President Biden is overseas in France to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day, but he was asked about Hunter's trial in an interview with ABC News. The president pledged to accept the outcome of his son's trial and not pardon Hunter if he's found guilty. In Washington, Taylor Popolars, Spectrum News.
On Spectrum News, the new charges the suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer is now facing, and what investigators say they found on the New York architect's hard drive.
Here's the deal. In this election year, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Fridays at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum, we know how much you depend on the reliability of our reliability by identifying potential service issues before they become a problem. If you're affected, we'll contact you and help schedule a free service appointment with one of our expert technicians. The proactive maintenance of our network is one of the many reasons Spectrum delivers the most reliable internet speeds in the nation. Spectrum, keeping you connected.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism is a disease that can affect help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups.
Al-Anon gave me my life back. I'm a better father and husband.
Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else's drinking? Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Local and virtual meetings are available. Maybe one could work for you. Call 1-866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez with some lightning safety tips. As you're heading into a weekend, you might have some outdoor plans in an area where there's some thunderstorms forecast, or just think about this throughout the summer when you're out with the kids at those outdoor activities. Lightning can strike 10 or more miles away from the thunderstorm, so it doesn't have to be rain. If you can hear thunder, you can be struck. So it's a good rule of thumb to remember: when thunder roars, go indoors. Once you're inside, you don't want to rush out as soon as the storm has passed. You want to wait 30 minutes before going back outside. Now, the areas that we're going to be watching for not only thunderstorms today, but a risk of severe weather includes parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and also Missouri. So around Kansas City, Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska, it's a level 2 out of 5 that there could be some tornadoes, damaging wind or hail. It's a level 1 out of 5 in some areas like Salt Lake City for today. So just keep that in mind. Remember, on the Spectrum News app, have those notifications set. If there is a warning in your area, you will be notified and you'll be able to take shelter immediately. We have the frontal boundary that's going to be pushing off the East Coast for today. High pressure is building in behind it. Look at the rain in the Kansas City tonight, and some thunderstorms and some rain showers that'll be scattered in places like Denver today and again on Saturday. Areas of rain will continue across parts of Wisconsin into Michigan Saturday, with a chance of rain in Chicago tomorrow. They'll dry out in Chicago on Sunday, but we'll have more showers and storms making their way across Kansas and then eventually into Kentucky by Sunday morning. The heat is still a big story in the Southwest, with excessive heat warnings continuing inland California, including areas like Vegas and Phoenix. Phoenix had a record of 113 degrees yesterday.
If you're just joining us or heading out the door, here's a look at what you need to know. President Biden will deliver a speech today in France about the importance of defending freedom and Americans, and continue his message that democracy is under threat by Donald Trump in this year's presidential election. Donald Trump attending his first campaign event yesterday since being found guilty in his New York hush money trial. Meanwhile, Trump says he plans to reveal who his running mate will be at the Republican National Convention next month. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address lawmakers in a joint session on July 24th. Congressional leaders decided on the date last night. Some lawmakers have said they will not attend over his handling of the war with Hamas. And that's a look at what you need to know this morning. The May jobs report coming out this morning, and many economists predict another soft month of employment gains. Some say the U.S. unemployment rate could reach 4% for the first time in more than 2 years. And with high interest rates and persistent inflation, more middle-class Americans are forced to keep a tighter grip on the.
They have to make choices. We're seeing that in the marketplace.
As for those above and below the middle class, economic data showing many lower-income consumers are having trouble paying their bills on time, and wealthy Americans are purchasing less overall. The man accused of murdering multiple women and leaving their bodies scattered along Long Island's coast is being charged with more murders. Rex Heuermann appearing yesterday before a judge to be arraigned in the deaths of 2 additional women. One disappeared in 2003 and the other was killed in 1993. Prosecutors now believe he was killing women much longer than previously thought. Heuermann had previously been charged with murdering 4 other women in a case known as the Gilgo Beach serial killings. Prosecutors also revealing Heuermann kept a blueprint of his crimes on his computer, which included notes on how to improve, quote, next time. Well, the West Coast is in the midst of a heat wave with some areas seeing temperatures in the triple digits. But this isn't shares how researchers in California are working to protect residents from high temperatures.
Across Southern California, temperatures are soaring. We're in the midst of the first major heat wave of the year. It's impacting the West Coast and the Southwest. Locally in Sun Valley, Michael Sanchez is feeling the effect.
It feels like I'm in a microwave. It's so hot.
And while this current heat wave is distinct because of how early in the season it is, extreme heat is something that 25-year-old Michael is used to. He's lived here in the San Fernando Valley his whole life, but says the past few years have been brutal.
It's getting hotter. It's for sure getting hotter. At least it seems that way.
He says if he does have to go out in the heat of the day, he looks for moments of relief in the shade. It's these everyday impacts of heat that put massive strain on communities, says Kelly Turner, UCL Heat Equity Program.
The impacts of heat span all aspects of daily life. We know that children's learning suffers. We know that women's prenatal health suffers. We have preterm births. We have stresses on the medical system.
This is some of the center's research.
So the areas where you see dark brown pixels, that's the census block groups. That's where you have very high poverty rates, so the darker colors, and then brown is where you have less than 20% shade.
Now, UCLA is partnering with the federal government, part of a new Center of Excellence for Heat-Resilient Communities. $2.25 million funded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration will go towards research like this.
Shade is the bigger thing in terms of making people feel cool rather than surfaces.
She says partnering with NOAA and other universities through the trees, where to paint reflective material, and are focused on passing policy that will help protect vulnerable populations. The goal is to create a more resilient state. With this year's summer just getting started, Michael says he's worried about what's to come.
During the day, I'm going to be inside all the time. It's already hot as it is, so I can't imagine how much hotter it's going to get as we go further into summer.
People across SoCal learning to live with the heat. Chase Beach, Spectrum News.
Just ahead on Spectrum News, a final spin for Pat Sajak. The category for this next puzzle is farewell.
Spectrum News Plus, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at the forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with Spectrum subscription.
Started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez. Good morning. We haven't had any named storms yet, but this is the time of the year in the beginning of the season where we watch if something could develop closer to home. It's out over the Atlantic. We wait until the heart of the season before we start to see more formation there. So in the month of June, we're more likely to see something develop, if it does develop, in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Northwest Caribbean. There's a lot of deep moisture down here. Nothing's formed yet. And while we have some tropical waves out here in the Atlantic, we usually look to the heart of the season when we follow those waves and any hurricane development. Now, we do see a lot of clouds. There's been a lot of rain here. And what's going to happen next week is that day rainfall graphic, a scattering of showers and storms in the central part of the country, pretty much dry for a whole week in parts of the west. But a closer look shows Florida, some areas here are in a drought, have good rain chances next week as tropical moisture moves up. Could be 3, 4, 5 inches of rain next week in parts of the Sunshine State. So we'll have to see if there's any tropical development, but at the very least, we're going to have a lot more moisture coming up from the Caribbean next week. Today, we're still talking about the hot weather in Las Vegas and Phoenix. Remember, you want to stay inside in air conditioning as much as you can again today because of that hot weather, and certainly want to take frequent breaks if you have to be outside staying well hydrated. In Oklahoma City, it's 91 today. San Antonio's 100 degrees. We have some 60s in Buffalo and in parts of Maine. Now, the temperatures for tonight can be very warm in Dallas at 77 degrees. Same thing in Houston, Texas. And then we have some 40s and 50s in parts of the north. 5 degrees in Dallas. We're going to be hot again in Phoenix at 108. Jacksonville, Florida, 96 degrees. With the high humidity in Florida, the heat index values have exceeded 110 degrees in some spots yesterday. So it's going to be a real hot, humid weekend here, but it will be much cooler for parts of the Midwest. The trend as we head into the weekend and into early next week, cooler air comes down into the Dakotas, into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago, and even into areas of Ohio Monday and Tuesday, while we'll have some warmer than normal conditions try to build back in to parts of the western U.S. early next week.
The crew of Boeing's Starliner mission arriving at the international, but it didn't happen without some issues along the way. The Starliner had to deal with some helium leaks during the long journey, but it docked after the first attempt was scrubbed.
Oh, to watch this team in action. They really make it look easy. For all the issues that came up today, that's come up on this flight, they make it look easy. I hope you all appreciate that.
The Starliner will spend at least 8 days at the space station before returning to Earth. A college student from Central Massachusetts is going to have a ball tomorrow. He's going from umping youth baseball to stepping out on the field at Fenway Park, calling a game for the country's most popular independent team, the Bananas. Our Cam Jandro steps inside the batter's box with the story.
Noah Katz wrapped up his baseball career in high school, but umpiring has allowed him to keep his passion for the game alive.
I get to, still be out there and, give back. When I'm umpiring in my Little League, give back to the state. It's such a blast to be out there umpiring.
During his time behind the plate, the Clark University student realized there's just not enough umpires out there for youth baseball. He started filming himself and ultimately created the Umpire Channel, which showcases the people calling balls, strikes, and outs. Katz's hope is to get more people involved.
The Umpire Channel has 200,000 followers, 100 million views. Think of that. That's a city of people. So when I'm out there now, I'll get, kids who are coming up to me who they started following a year ago, and now they've started umpiring.
His social media helped him get in touch with the Bananas, where he called a few games for the Georgia-based satirical baseball team. Those games are only in front of 5,000 or so people, a great practice run before he takes the field at America's most beloved ballpark this weekend.
I was nervous before my first Bananas game, but once the game starts, it's so fast-paced than if I hadn't umpired before, but still a little bit with so many fans.
Noah is studying marketing at Clark and says he's still not sure which career path he'll choose, but he says this weekend will go a long way towards building his career on the diamond.
For now, I'm really looking to continue to develop the channel and see where I can combine, umpiring and the social media aspect of what I'm doing on the Umpire Channel together.
Cam Jandro, Spectrum News.
The last chance to buy a vowel from Pat Sajak and a true end of an era. The final episode for Wheel of Fortune's longtime game show host is airing today. Last summer, the 77-year-old announced he would retire after 41 seasons. Ryan Seacrest is set to take the wheel as host in September. The American Idol host will be working alongside Vanna White, who renewed her contract through the 2025 to 2026 season. And we will give our wheel another spin. Stay connected with us here at Spectrum News by getting your national and local headlines on the go. Just download the free Spectrum News app. It's available in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Stay with us.
The 2024 election will decide who leads our nation and the balance of power in Congress, impacting all of us. From Capitol Hill to the Oval Office, let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth coverage with our dedicated experts in local politics. Strengthening democracy by informing your community, all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-packing jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual, and she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out."